Tomorrow, the Supreme Court will hear arguments over a transgender discrimination case. The arguments will help the justices decide whether state bans on gender-affirming care for minors are unconstitutional. Joining us for some insight this afternoon is Maya Goldman with Axios. Maya, thank you for being here. We appreciate that as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
What do we expect to hear from the plaintiffs who brought this and are now calling the laws unconstitutional?
So the Biden administration is basically asked the Supreme Court to look at Tennessee's state ban against gender-affirming care for minors specifically. And the Biden administration is arguing that it's unconstitutional because it violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, which says that, basically that no U.S. citizen can be discriminated against, for who they are. And Tennessee, on the other hand, is saying, well, the Constitution also generally defers to states on medical treatments, and so therefore this should stand.
And I want to highlight again, the law in this case stems from Tennessee. So what kind of defense is the Tennessee Attorney General expected to put forward to defend this law?
He says that, like I said, the Constitution generally defers to states on the matters of public health and medical regulations. And he also says that the law is not discriminatory. It does not discriminate based on sex, according to the Tennessee AG, and it allows the same medical procedures for children that need it for other medical reasons. And his argument is that this is not discriminatory.
Ahead of tomorrow's hearings and arguments in front of the Supreme Court, you had a chance to actually speak to some medical experts and other groups about this kind of care. What did they say about the significance that this will play out in front of the justices?
Yeah, well, I think it's important to step back and understand that this kind of care, gender-affirming care for kids, is recommended by medical associations in the U.S., like the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics. It comes with guardrails. It's usually there's significant mental health counseling before any medical interventions are done. Medical interventions don't happen on kids before they start puberty. Surgeries on adolescents are exceedingly rare. And puberty blockers and surgeries are used, puberty blockers specifically have been used for 4 decades on kids that have early onset puberty. So they're not experimental, like some critics will say. I think another thing that makes tomorrow's case really interesting is that the Republican sweep in Washington kind of raises the stakes a little bit. The Trump administration put a lot of money into messaging during the end of the election cycle, attacking transgender people, and that message seems to have resonated. We now see we have the first transgender member of Congress elected, and there was a debate in the House of Representatives over whether she should be able to use the bathrooms that correspond to her gender. So this basically is going to determine whether the justice system, the legal system, is going to be a check on the federal government's powers to attack trans people.
Yeah, and finally, Maya, I want to ask you about this. We don't expect a ruling on this particular case maybe until June, but this fight could continue even after that. You mentioned some of these other instances that are kind of happening alongside this, but what impact do you think this case will have on the future?
If the Tennessee ban is allowed to stay, it sort of creates a patchwork system, or solidifies the patchwork system that already exists for gender-affirming care. Some states allow it for kids, some states don't, and that could continue. If the Supreme Court says that the ban is unconstitutional, then that opens up gender-affirming care theoretically for kids in more states, but that doesn't necessarily mean that access is going to magically improve, and it also doesn't mean that other challenges to other bans won't succeed.
It will be fascinating to see how this all proceeds. So Maya Goldman with Axios, thanks again for joining us and for updating us about this.